Well, hey there, my friends. It's the first week of August 2026. That means it's time for the Cape Coral Monthly Real Estate Market Update video. I do one of these videos every month, and these are in addition to the weekly videos that I put out on this channel. But on these monthly reports, basically what we're going to do is we're going to take a deep dive into the Cape Coral real estate market, specifically looking at the numbers that just came in from July of 2026. So last month's numbers, we're going to give you kind of an overview of the entire market and see what that's doing, and then we're really going to dive deep and break things down into a few different categories. We'll take a look at the biggest category we have here, which is non-waterfront single-family homes. Then, of course, we're going to look at the Gulf access home market, the waterfront real estate here in Cape Coral, and that's been on fire so far this year. And then we'll finish everything up by looking at condos and townhomes, and then I'll give you some advice if maybe you're a current or future buyer in the Cape Coral real estate market, as well as some advice if you're a current or future seller in a little bit better looking Cape Coral real estate market. Make sure you stick around for those. There are chapters down in the video timeline. These videos are usually more than an hour because we really get into the specific fine details of the Cape Coral real estate market. So video chapters are down there if you'd like to bounce around to some different categories or take a look at some of that advice towards the end of the video. I'll wrap this entire video up if you don't want to wait through the whole thing with just a general summary of the current state of the Cape Coral real estate market. But if you're not familiar with who I am, my name is Dustin Guthrie. I'm a full-time real estate broker. I have been right here in Cape Coral for 20 years now. I live right here in Cape Coral with my wife and our 3 little kids. And again, I do these videos every single month, but these are in addition to the weekly videos that we put out on this channel where we're just talking about some really good, useful information. Sometimes we're looking at some really fun real estate. Other times we're covering important things that you need to know about, like flood insurance or utility assessments or maybe some new developments that are coming into the area. So if you haven't already done so, make sure you hit the subscribe button. Make sure you turn the notifications on as well so you can catch these videos every single week. I missed the last couple of weeks. I've been out of town, so I apologize for that, but we really do try to get one video out every single week on this channel. So make sure you're subscribed. And with that being said, let's get into the Cape Coral real estate market update for August 2026. I always start these videos out just for fun by showing you the lowest priced and the highest priced sales that occurred in a few different categories. So let's start off with the lowest sales of the month. And again, we're talking about July 2026. Let's take a look at the lower sales. All right, so these are the lowest price sales in the entire Cape Coral real estate market that happened this last month. We're going to look at a few different categories. We'll start off with the lowest overall residential sale, which is usually always a condo. And so the lowest condo sale of the month was this one right here. We're in the Southeast Cape, 607 Southeast 47th Street, unit number 1. This is over near Cape Coral Parkway and Coronado Parkway, so it's right close to downtown Cape Coral. It's in an excellent location, but this is a 2-bedroom, 2-bath condo built in 1977, a little bit over 1,100 square feet, 1,122 square feet, and it was on the market, hit the market at $75,000 and sold in less than 2 weeks for $70,000 cash. Now, this unit looked like it needed some work in there, but it wasn't too bad. You know, it had a roof that was installed a couple of years ago, as well as a brand new HVAC system. So some of the more expensive items were taken care of here, but it was mostly original inside. It certainly looked like it had a lot of original items in there from 1977, countertops, kitchen, all that kind of stuff. Interestingly enough, you know, usually these lower condo sales are 55 and older communities, but this one was not. This is not a 55 and older. Just needed some repairs and updates in there. And there's only 8 units in this complex, but the big thing about this one is that location. The location's absolutely fantastic. It's near downtown and the Bimini Basin Park and all those fun restaurants and clubs and things down there near Southeast 47th. Fees in here was a little bit higher, you know, $70,000 condo, but then you've got $601 a month in HOA fees, and that's kind of been the story for condos here recently. We've had these HOA fees kind of go up over the course of the last 3 or 4 years, and that's one of the main reasons that condos have come down in price more than any other category. And we're going to get into that a little more when we talk about the statistics for condos and townhomes. But all in all, this is a pretty great buy. Anytime even, you know, a smaller condo like this, you get that thing under $100,000 and you're doing pretty darn well, even though the fees are a little bit higher in there. But congrats to the buyers and the sellers. $70,000 cash was the lowest condo sale that we saw last month in the city of Cape Coral. Let's take a look at the lowest single-family home. So we looked at the lowest condo. Let's look at the lowest single-family home. And this time we're over in the southwest section of Cape Coral, 706 Southwest 31st 31st Street, 706 Southwest 31st Street. This is over just off of Gleason Parkway and Skyline Boulevard, so another excellent location. It has central water and sewer over there. Assessments are all paid off on this, but this was a little bit smaller property. It is a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 1176 square feet, so just under 1,200 square feet, a little bit smaller house. And this one was listed at $120,000. It sold the day that it was listed for $120,000 cash. So somebody came in there and gave them full price offer on the day that it was listed, which is no surprise. I mean, $120,000. I think that's a little bit less than maybe we've seen all year. I'd have to go back and look, at least for a home that you can move into, not something that's fire damaged or something like that. But this property, it is a wood frame home, so a little bit inferior construction. Most of the homes that we have down here are concrete block construction. They just hold up a little better to the storms and things like that. But this one had a metal roof, a newer AC system in there. All importantly, it's not in that AE flood zone, so you don't have that expensive flood insurance there. It probably needed a new kitchen, new floors. You know, with this being a wood frame home, I probably would have wanted to check for termites, which I'm sure they probably did there. But all in all, this is a great purchase, $120,000. You know, this house was listed for $330,000 3 years ago, and they took it off the market for a while and started back earlier this year at $215,000. Took it off the market again for a little while, put it back on the market at $120,000, and it sold in the same day. And it's not surprising. I mean, usually we don't see too many single-family home sales under $200,000. So for one to get all the way down to $120,000. I'm sure this listing agent had a handful of folks that were ready to move on this property on day one, which is why they sold it full price cash the first day that it was listed. So congrats to the buyers and the sellers. It's a great property, even though it's wood framed, a little bit older. This was built in '87 with a 1-car garage. But this is a very, very good pickup for whoever bought this house. $120,000 cash was the lowest single-family home sale of the month of July 2026. Let's do a fun one. Let's do the lowest Gulf Access home sale. Kind of the benchmark for Gulf Access properties on the low end is $400,000. We usually don't see too many Gulf Access home sales, even in bad condition, sell for under that $400,000 mark. And there were only 2, in fact, this month that sold under $400,000, and this is the lowest one right here. We're back in the Southeast Cape, 2540 Southeast 25th Avenue. This is right at the end of Everest Parkway, just south of the Midpoint Bridge. So an excellent waterfront location. This is direct Gulf access, so no bridges to get out by boat. It's probably 5 minutes out to open water there. And this thing was listed at $375,000, and again, sold in just a few days, a little bit over a week, 10 days sold. Full price conventional financing this time. $375,000 was the sale price. This is a 3-bedroom, 2-bath built in 1970, just over 1,500 square feet of living area inside. Had a 1-car garage, but again, it had excellent direct access. The roof on it was only 2 years old. This is a concrete block home, so unlike the last one, which was wood frame, this is a concrete block home. Super clean inside, just looks a little dated, tile flooring throughout. You know, when we get into a little bit of situation with these properties, especially these direct access properties, these are in that AE flood zone, so a lot of times the flood insurance is more expensive. Luckily, the seller here had a previous policy from back before the big change that we had in 2021, so the buyer was able to assume that lower flood insurance policy, which is really, really nice. You always need to check, and if you're buying a home in the AE flood zone, you always got to check if that seller has an existing flood policy, because oftentimes you can assume that and you're getting it at a much lower rate than you otherwise would be if you had to go get a brand new policy. But this is a really nice buy, $375,000. Again, there was only 2 sales under $400,000 this past month, so great buy, direct access, great location over there at the end of Everest. And really great pickup, but $375,000 was the lowest Gulf Access home sale of the entire month of July 2026. And there were a lot of Gulf Access home sales, especially for the summer months this past month. And we'll get into that here when we talk about Gulf Access homes. But that's the lowest sales of the month in a few different categories. Let's jump over to the fun ones and take a look at the highest sales of the month of July 2026 for the entire city of Cape Coral. All right, highest sales of the month of July 2026 for the entire city of Cape Coral. We'll look at a few different categories, similar categories. We'll start off with the highest condo sale that we saw last month. Usually we don't have too many condo sales in the summertime. I think we only had a handful this past month. It's much more of a category that's more active during the first 6 months of the year versus the second 6 months. But we had a few upper-end condo sales this past month. The highest one was this one right here, 5941 Tarpon Gardens Circle, Unit 102. This is actually an attached villa, so it's not a true condo. Sort of like almost like a duplex or something like that. They're attached villas there in Tarpon Point Marina, which is a super high-end, beautiful development down there in the southwest section of Cape Coral. So they have beautiful high-rise condos in there. This is not one of them. This is one of the attached villas. But this property was listed at $599 flat, $599,000, on the market for just 1 day over 2 months, 61 days, and sold for $560,000. It did sell $560,000 cash, but these are nice units over there. They were built in 2004, so they're not terribly old. 3-bedroom, 3-bath, 2178 square feet inside. They have 2-car garages, of course, upgraded, impact windows and doors. Really nice kitchen, some solid updates. These are not on a Gulf access piece of waterfront. It's actually the lake right there, but believe it or not, even though these are right there next to the marina, these attached villas are not in that AE flood zone. They're built up a little bit higher, so you don't have to worry about the flood insurance there. And Tarpon Point Marina has some excellent amenities there, really, really top notch. But you got to pay for that. And these attached villas, it's almost $1,000 a month in HOA fees, but still. $560,000 sold in just 2 months, and really, really nice pickup. That's one of the better areas, better developments in the entire city of Cape Coral down there in the southwest. Excellent location. You're right there next to the marina and all the restaurants that Tarpon Point Marina has to offer. If you've ever been to the Westin, this is where the Westin is in the southwest section of Cape Coral. So top-notch area, and congrats to the buyers and the sellers. $560,000 was the highest condo sale of the month. The last few months we've gotten over $1 million. But it makes sense. We're in the slower summer months for condos, and so we don't see as many, especially of the higher end condo sales. But congrats to the buyers and the sellers. Before we get into the highest overall, as you can imagine, the highest overall sale of the month is almost always a Gulf access property. Let's look at the highest non-Gulf access home that sold this past month. And again, we're in the southwest. Great location. 120 Southwest 9th Avenue. This is over there just north of Pine Island Road and west of Nicholas Parkway. This property was a 4-bedroom plus a den, 4.5 baths, brand new, custom built, new construction home, and 4,200 square feet inside. It was a very large property, at least by Cape Coral standards. And this was just an amazing property. It was listed for $1.249 and sold for $1.15 right there at the end of July. It was on the market for about 2.5 months. They started out at $1.35 million, dropped it to $1.249, and then it sold in 2 months after they made that reduction. But this is not a flood zone over there, and this home just has a ton of custom upgrades in it. It's on 1/3 of an acre, which you pretty much have to be to get a 4,200 square foot home with a pool on it. But just beautiful lake views. Again, not in the flood zone, very modern finishes, and what's maybe most important, it had a huge outdoor living spaces here with an outdoor kitchen. It was all fenced in the back. Of course, everything was hurricane impact windows and doors and things like that. Concrete tile roof, dual AC systems, which you probably need to cool down a 4,200 square foot home, but overall just a really, really impressive property. And it's really, really good to see these non-Gulf access homes selling in excess of $1 million. And even though this was a brand new custom home, sold relatively quickly. Again, 2.5 months as far as these really high-end non-Gulf access homes go is pretty impressive. And again, $1.15 million was the highest non-Gulf access home sale of the month of July, and that was a cash purchase. So congrats to the buyers and the sellers and their agents on a really great transaction. Again, it's good to see these non-Gulf access homes selling upwards of $1 million. But let's get over to the fun one. The highest overall sale, and again, these are almost always Gulf access home sales. As you can imagine, the Gulf access saltwater canal or riverfront properties are just a little bit higher value properties, and so we usually see those properties almost without exception being the highest overall. So the highest overall sale last month was this one, again in the Southwest, a really terrific neighborhood, 1504 Southwest 57th Street. This is right across from Cape Harbor, actually between Cape Harbor and Tarpon Point Marina. So again, pretty much the best location that you can get in the city, arguably. And this was a big direct access corner canal property. I mean, they're only about 10 minutes out to open water, so excellent waterfront right there. But this was a huge property. It wasn't a new construction property, but it wasn't terribly old. Built in 2007, 5 bedrooms, 4.5 baths, and just under 7,000 square feet of living area. And that's just inside. That doesn't include an absolutely massive outdoor living space. But check this place out. This is a huge custom home on a 1/3 of an acre corner lot. It has 178 feet of seawalled water frontage. Beautiful outdoor spaces here. Big wraparound dock with a boat lift. This was a 35,000-pound boat lift that this place had right here. But again, the star of the show on this property is that outdoor living space. I mean, it's just a huge outdoor living space out there with that big custom pool, fire pits outside. It did have solar panel and a metal roof in there, so its solar panels would probably help you out quite a bit trying to cool down a 6,950 square foot home inside. But this thing was listed at $3.995 million and sold in just a couple days, over 3 months, for $3.6 million. $3.6 million cash is what this sold for. And just an absolutely amazing property. Certainly congrats to the buyers and the sellers. Beautiful updates inside there, coffered ceilings. Of course, there's hurricane impact windows and doors everywhere. And this one even had a built-in 400-gallon high-end fish tank in one of the walls. So just an absolutely cool property. I would have really liked to have seen this one in person because it's fun going in these beautiful high-end custom homes. But congrats to the buyers and the sellers. $3.6 million was the high mark for the month of July. And we had a few of them close over $2 million. This was by far the highest one that we saw last month, and just a beautiful, beautiful property. But that wraps up the highest sales of the month. So let's start to dive into the statistics portion of this report. We always start out by giving you an overview of the entire residential real estate market, and then we'll start to dive into some things and cover a few different categories. So let's get into the broad overview of the residential Cape Coral real estate market for August 2026. All right, so let's dive into these stats. Again, we're starting off with the total market stats for residential properties. So these numbers include everything: condos, townhomes, single-family homes, on water, off water, everything from that $70,000 condo all the way up to that $3.6 million beautiful custom Gulf access home. So we'll start off with the total number of sales we saw last month. Again, the second half of the year is usually a fair amount slower than the first half of the year. As you can imagine, we have quite a few more sales in the first 6 months of the year with people being in from out of town. I mean, our population goes up by almost 30% in the winter and spring months. So we just have a lot more activity in those first 6 months of the year, and the second half of the year is a little bit slower, but really not so much this year. Take a look at this chart. These are the total number of monthly sales going back to January of 2024, so a little bit over 2.5 years. Last month in July, we had 537 total residential sales, and again, that doesn't include vacant land or anything like that. It doesn't include apartment complexes or commercial buildings or anything like that. This is just residential properties here in the city of Cape Coral. 537 sales last month. That's down a little bit from June's number of 578. But this is just an amazing summer so far. We've really had a really strong start to this 2026 real estate market. And the first 7 months of the year so far, we've seen a total of 3,721 sales from January through July. And actually, the high point on this chart was just this past April. We had 633 sales in this past April, which was a record for the last 2.5 years. But let's just kind of compare the activity we've seen thus far this year in the first 7 months to the first 7 months of a few years past. Again, 3,721 total residential sales so far this year in the first 7 months, January through July. You go back to 2025, the first 7 months of 2025, we only sold 3,412. So if you want to look at that like an increase in overall demand in terms of the total number of sales, we've sold about 309 properties more so far this year than we did last year, and that represents an increase in demand of about 9.1%, which is substantial. And even if you go back to the first 7 months of a few previous years, 2024 in the first 7 months, 3,630 total sales, so we're outpacing 2024, and even 2023, 3,487 total sales in the first 7 months of that year. So we're well in advance of that. So this real estate market has been heading in the right direction. If you want to see this turnaround, demand up 9.1% across all categories is pretty remarkable. And 537, you compare that to the last couple of Julys. Last July, we only sold 485, and in July of 2024, it was 522. So we're outpacing by almost every metric the last couple of years, certainly, and that's great to see. So again, 9.1% we're up so far this year in terms of the total number of sales. Now, part of the reason that we are up is because of the median price. The median price, as you may well know, has come down a fair amount, certainly since the top of the market, which was roughly spring of 2022. But let's take a look at the median price. This is very interesting. Look at this chart. Again, this is the monthly median price. So this is the numbers, the median price for every month going back to January 2024. Our median price for all of those 537 sales last month was $393,000. That's up from June's number of $376,500. And actually, as you can see on here, we've had 4 straight months of increasing median prices. The median price, as you can probably understand, can kind of bounce around from month to month, so we're really looking for broader trends here. But as you can see, I mean, the pricing kind of flattened out, and you can sort of make the case that now that we've had 4 or 5 months in a row of increasing median prices, it looks like this particular market cycle is turning around and making a run up in the other direction. We'll have to see how that continues, but let's just put this into some broader perspective here and take the first 7 months of the year so far. Let's take all of the sales, those 3,700 and some odd sales in the first 7 months of this year so far. Let's take all of those together and find out what the median is. The first 7 months of the year for this year, the median price in those first 7 months, $370,000. If you take the first 7 months of 2025, the median price there was $365,000. We're $15,000 up from where we were in the first, basically half of the last year. So that means prices are up about 1.4% from where they were last year. And when you take the first 7 months of some previous years, in 2024, those first 7 months median price was $390, so we're down off of that. 2023, first 7 months, $400,000. In 2022, when we kind of hit the peak, those first 7 months was $415. So you can see how this market is kind of corrected right now, but the case can be made at this point in the first 7 months compared to the first 7 months of last year. We're up about 1.5%, 1.4%, or about $15,000, which is pretty remarkable. So again, we've had 4 months of consistent increases in the median price. You go back to March, and the median price, March of this year, the median price in March of this year was $352,250. So we're up $40,750 from where we were in March, was about 11.6%. Now again, these numbers kind of fluctuate month to month, so you have to look at the kind of broader context of everything. It doesn't mean the prices are up 11.5% since March. It certainly doesn't. But I think the case can be made when you're looking at the first 7 months that we're up almost 1.5% from where we were this time last year. And really, that's kind of been led by Gulf Access Homes. I can't wait to get into the Gulf Access Homes to show you how active that particular segment of the market has been. I think that is really pulling these numbers up quite a bit. But that's the overall median price, $393 right now. I want to take another metric that I don't often cover, and that's the total market volume, the total number of sales, the total number of dollars spent in the real estate market so far this year. Take a look at this chart. This is the total number of dollars spent in any given month for residential real estate in the city of Cape Coral. And I just want to point out a couple of things just to kind of bolster my view that this particular market cycle is turning around. Again, our total number of sales is up about 9.1%. So you would think that the volume would roughly be the same. If we're selling 9.1% more properties this year versus last year, you would think the dollar amount would be right around that 9%. But it's really not the case. Check this out. Total number of dollars spent in the real estate market in the first 7 months of the year so far in Cape Coral, $1,727,854,869. Let's take the first 7 months of last year, $1,522,316,432. So in terms of the dollars spent this year versus last year, we're up about $205,538,432. 437. So the total number of dollars being spent right now in the real estate market is up 13.5%. Number of sales up 9.1%. Total dollars spent up 13.5%. That suggests to me that the higher end of the market is moving a lot faster than the lower end of the market, and I think that's kind of backed up as we're going to get into the stats in a little bit. It's just a really noticeably stronger market in the upper price ranges versus the lower price ranges. I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that the upper price ranges have a lot more cash sales, so they're not as affected by higher interest rates, higher mortgage interest rates. And so we're seeing some of these higher Gulf access homes sell in excess of what we saw last year, and that's why the total number of dollars being spent this year is so much more than actually the number of properties that we've sold so far this year. I just thought that was really interesting. I wanted to pull that up. I normally don't cover that, but it's important because it kind of paints a picture a little bit of what the higher end of the market is doing compared to the lower end of the market. But let's take a look at the inventory. Total number of listings on the market in any given month. Here is the chart going back to January 2024. Take a look at the amount of inventory that's come off the market in the last 17 or so months. Absolutely incredible. The total number of active listings that were on the market at some point last month, 3278. That's down from June's number of 3463. We hit a high point for the year in February at 3964, but compare these to the last couple of years. In July, again, July of this year, 3278 active listings on the market at some point or another. July of 2025, we had 4,058. So we're down significantly, and even if you go back 2 years ago, July in 2024, 3884, so we're well down from that. In fact, just the 1 year from July to July, July 25 to July 2026, we're down 780 properties, or about 19.2%. And the market cycle, this particular market cycle, peaked out in terms of inventory in February of last year. February last year, we had a big run up going into February, or going into the early months of 2025, and it peaked out in February of last year at 4,985. So we've taken a net 1,707 properties off the market since that high point in February of last year. That's only 17 or so months ago. That represents a reduction in inventory of over 1/3, 34.2%. We've taken over 1/3 of the available number of properties, net available number of properties off the market just since February of last year. And that puts us at the lowest inventory that we've seen in this real estate market since September of 2023. I think that is absolutely remarkable. We're already into the low 3,000s. And I'm going to make a little bit of a prediction because this inventory continues to go down. Usually it kind of flattens off a little bit in the summer. The inventory always goes down in the summer a little bit. But we've seen several months in a row here of consistent larger decreases in inventory. I'll make a prediction that we get under 3,000 active listings on the market by the end of the year, and maybe even by the fall, maybe even next month. I mean, it's just incredible the amount of inventory that we've taken off the market, and that's one of the metrics that we're looking at, and that's leading me to say that this particular market cycle is making a turn, and we are going to start seeing it going in the other direction. It's been a buyer's market for a few years now, and inevitably it turns around at some point, and I think there's a case to be made that it's either making a turn now or already made it. So really important stuff, but that covers the overall residential real estate market in the city of Cape Coral. Let's start to break these down into a few different categories, and we'll start off with the largest category that we have here in the city of Cape Coral, and that's non-waterfront single-family homes. Let's take a look at those. Okay, off-water or non-waterfront single-family homes are by far the largest category of real estate that we have here in the city of Cape Coral. As you may be aware, we've got a ton of single-family homes strewn throughout the entire city. Most of those, even though we've got over 400 miles of canals here in the city of Cape Coral, most of these single-family homes are not on the water, whether it be freshwater or Gulf access canals. So let's take a look at that. This is the largest category we have. Again, here is the total number of monthly sales, and this chart goes back to January 2024. Total number of off-water single-family homes that sold last month in July is 315. That's down from June's number of 332. But again, we're getting into the slower summer months, so we naturally see a few fewer sales in the summer months versus the first 6 months of the year when we've got more of our seasonal residents in town, and there are a few more properties sold during that first 6 months. So 315 is still pretty strong for July. If we look back last year, we're a little bit off that mark. There was 320 of these sales last July in 2025, so we're only down about 5, or about 1.6% from July to July. And if you look back in July of 2024, we had sold 358, so we're down 43, or about 12% from back then. But I think we need to take the broader context in here and look at the first 7 months of the year and see how we're doing so far compared to the last few years. First 7 months of the year so far in 2026, we sold 2,133 of these. Last year in 2025, in the first 7 months, we sold 2,144. So we are down very, very slightly, just 11. We're 11 properties off pace of where we were in the first 7 months of last year. Represents a little bit over a half a percentage point. So statistically, probably irrelevant. We're probably right on par. We could have a really good month next month and get us back basically on par with what we did last year. And again, this is one of the slower categories just simply because a lot more of these properties are being purchased with mortgages, and the mortgage rate, I think right now it's the highest it's been all year. So the mortgage rates have been stubbornly high. As a result, we're kind of seeing this category lagging behind some of the higher end categories like Gulf Access, where there are a lot more cash sales, and we'll get into that when we cover Gulf Access homes next. But let's just compare this to the last few years. You know, again, 2,133 of these sales so far this year. In 2024, in the first 7 months, we did 2,340, so we're off pace there. In 2023, first 7 months, even though that was right after Hurricane Ian, so there was a little bit of a hiccup there with that. 2,279 in the first 7 months of 2023. So we're just a little bit off pace in this, and I really attribute that almost entirely to the higher mortgage rates. The affordability for these types of buyers is just down a little bit, considering that even though the stock market has been doing very, very well and people's retirement accounts are up, the overall mortgage rates remain stubbornly high, and it's just kind of putting some pressure on buyers' purchasing ability. So pretty interesting, but basically we're on par in terms of the total number of sales with where we were last year. As my papers fly off the table here, let's look at the median price for these homes. Again, so 315 sales last month. Total median price for those 315 sales for this off-water single-family homes, $350,000. That's exactly what it was in June. So we've been very flat, really been very flat in this category, as you can tell by this chart, with the exception of a couple of months up and down there just in the middle. We've been remarkably flat since really summer of last year. Really the last 12 months we've been very, very close to that $350,000 mark. If you go back to July of 2025, the median price was $335, so it was down a little bit. We're up about $15,000 from where the median price was in July of last year. July of 2024, we were at $362,250, so we're down about $12,250 just comparing months. But again, I think you got to take the broader context of the first 7 months to get a little bit larger sample size to really find out what we're doing compared to the last couple of years and where the market direction is heading. And so in the first 7 months, all of those sales in that first 7 months, the median price for those sales, $340,000. Last year in the first 7 months, it was $345,000. So we are down $5,000, which is about 1.4%. And this is really one of the only categories that we're seeing in the residential real estate market where the pricing in the first 7 months of the year so far is actually down a little bit. But 1.4% isn't a whole heck of a lot. Especially when you're taking big chunks of properties, big swaths of the year like that in the first 7 months. So I think it's just showing us signs that we are flattening out in this category. The other categories are doing a little bit better. The off-water single-family homes are lagging behind in that turnaround, but we are still remarkably flat. Still very, very much close to where we were this time last year. If you want to look at the broader correction that we've seen in the first 7 months of 2023, the median price for this category was $375,000. So we are down $35,000 from where we were in 2023, which is about 9.3%. I didn't pull the stats for 2022, but these would have peaked out in 2022. So we've made a market correction in this category, probably in excess of 10%. And again, that doesn't even take into consideration we've had a few years of high inflation. So generally speaking, real estate is a pretty good hedge against inflation. So if you want to talk about 4, 5, 6% inflation rates, probably in reality, over a couple of those last few years. I think that market correction is actually maybe a little bit more than what it shows on paper. So that's the median price. Let's take a look at the inventory. Again, this chart I'm about to show you is the total number of monthly active listings. So some of these properties, some of these listings came off the market, some of them sold, some of them expired, some of them, were taken off the market completely. It's just at one point or another during the month, there were this many properties on the market at one time or another. And the number for this last month in July was 1908. That's down. Again, 1948 was the number in June. But again, we've made significant progress on the inventory front in spite of those prices being flattened out. We've taken a lot of inventory off the market. I think if we hadn't taken all this inventory off the market, those prices would have been down a little bit farther. But July of last year, the total number of active listings on the market was 2252. So just since July of last year, from July to July, 1 year, we're down 344 net listings, or about 15.3%. And if you want to look at what we've done since the high point of this particular market cycle, the high point of this market cycle was in February of last year, where we had 2,733 active listings on the market. We've taken 825 net listings off the market. That's 30.2%. Almost a third of the market has come off the market since February of last year, whatever that is, 17 months ago or so. So that's pretty remarkable. And even if you go back 2 years ago, when the inventory hadn't started making that big run up yet, July of 2024, we had 2,215 of these properties on the market. So we're still down 307 from July 2024's number, or about 14%, 13.9% over the course of 2 years. So we're making a tremendous amount of progress across all categories. This category is maybe lagging behind some of the other ones that are doing a little bit better. I think that's entirely attributable to the higher mortgage rates right now. But we've seen some significant progress on the inventory front, and that's the main driving reason why I think you've seen this pricing really flatten out. And if you really look at the last 12 months in this category, the median price has really hovered around that $350,000 mark. So we'll see what happens in the later summer months. Again, we'll see probably few fewer sales in the summer months, especially as mortgage rates remain high. If we get some relief from that, I think this category will start to catch up with some of the other categories, and we'll see a big turnaround in off-water residential single-family homes in the city of Cape Coral. That wraps up off-water single-family homes. Let's take a look at everybody's favorite category, and mine included, which is Gulf access homes. So these are Gulf access. These are properties on a body of water, usually a canal. That's a saltwater canal where you have access by boat out to the open Gulf. Let's take a look at seeing what these guys are doing, because it's been remarkable what Gulf access homes have done this year. All right, Gulf access waterfront single-family homes in the city of Cape Coral. The Gulf access Cape Coral real estate market has been on fire so far this year. There's no really other way to describe it. That's not any sort of hype. Wait till you see these numbers. But let's start off with the Gulf access home sales. Gulf access, it's very much a seasonal product, so we really see the majority of our sales in the first 6 months of the year compared to the second 6 months of the year. We've got a lot more folks that are buying Gulf access homes that are maybe seasonal residents, or these are second homes. So these are folks that are down here for the winters and the spring, and then they go back up north to maybe their primary residence during the off season. So we don't see as much activity in the summertime in normal years. This is not a normal year. We've seen a tremendous amount of activity so far this summer, seen a tremendous amount of activity so far this entire years, thus in the first 7 months of the year, but the summer months, I mean, we put up our highest number of sales last month that we have all year. That's incredible for July. I can't stress that enough. But let's take a look at the total number of monthly sales. Here's the chart for the monthly number of Gulf access home sales going back to January 2024. We had 110 Gulf access homes sell in July, and we had 107 that closed in June, which is a really strong number for June. But compare these to the last couple of Julys. I mean, July is, we really never see in a normal market cycle, we never really see these Gulf access homes get in excess of 100. Last year in July 2025, we only had 71 Gulf access homes sell. In 2024 in July, we only had 63. So we've almost doubled where we were in July of 2 years ago. I mean, that's pretty remarkable. And again, 110 properties that sold in July is the second highest month of the year so far, and it's in the middle of summer. It's just very, very remarkable. But let's look at the broader context of this, because These homes have just been selling so much faster this year than they have in the last couple of years. In the first 7 months of the year so far, January through July, we've seen in the Cape Coral real estate market 703 Gulf Access home sales so far in the first 7 months of the year. Last year, from January to July of 2025, we only had 544. We're up 159 sales compared to where the pace that we were on last year. That represents a 29.2% increase in, if you want to look at it like demand, which I do, there's that many more properties selling now, 29.2% increase in demand for Gulf Access single-family homes this year compared to the first, basically half, the first 7 months of 2025. And that's just remarkable. And even if you go back to previous years that did a little better than 2025, first 7 months of 2024, 586 sales. First 7 months of 2023, even though we had the hurricane late in 2022, 550 sales. We didn't get over 600 sales the previous 3 years, and now we're at 703. So it's absolutely remarkable, and to have 110 properties sell in July is just very noteworthy. But let me touch on the volume real quick, just because I have these figures here. I don't have the chart for you, but the total number of dollars spent on Gulf Access home sales so far in the first 7 months of this year was $615,682,129. First 7 months of 2025, the total volume for that was $464,373,889. So we've spent, in terms of total dollars spent, we've spent $151,308,240 more on Gulf Access homes this year than we did in the first 7 months of last year. That's 33%. There's 33% more dollars spent so far this year on Gulf Access homes than last year. So the number of sales is up 29.2%, but the total number of dollars spent is up 33%. And again, I think that has everything to do with the higher end of the Gulf Access home market moving a little better. We've seen a lot more of these higher end sales, the 3 millions, the 2.5s, the 2.2s, the 1.9s. We've seen a lot of this higher end movement in the Gulf Access home market, which is a really good sign. I mean, the stock markets and people's retirement accounts and investment accounts have been doing relatively pretty good over the course of the last year so far. I think that's why we're seeing this particular product move in, certainly outpacing some of the other categories like non-waterfront single-family homes. I mean, almost 50% of the sales for Gulf Access homes so far this year have been cash sales. So those folks are not affected by those higher mortgage interest rates, and so their purchasing power is pretty good, especially since the investment accounts probably are doing a little bit better than they were last year. So pretty remarkable. 29.2% increase in demand, 33% in total dollar volume in terms of the number of sales that we've seen so far for Gulf Access homes. I'm starting to sweat out here. It's a little bit hot even in July. And black was probably not a great choice of shirt color this morning. All right, let's look at the median price for those 110 sales. Median price this past month in July, $721,500. That's up very slightly from $720,000, which is what June's number is. But as you can imagine, I mean, even when we're doing 110 sales a month, the sample size is not very big. There's a really wide range of values for these Gulf Access homes. We saw one sell at $375,000 this past month. One sold at $3.6 million. So there's a pretty stark difference in what you can get in terms of the Gulf Access home prices. So we're naturally, month to month, we're going to see these monthly median prices fluctuate quite a bit from one month to the next. So we kind of have to take broader chunks of the year and look at it to get a better perspective. But the first 7 months of the year, all of the sales that we've had so far in 2026 up to the end of July, the total median price for those total number of sales was $740,000. First 7 months of 2025, the median price for those was $719,000. We are up $21,000, or about 2.9%. When we looked at the first 6 months of the year last month, I think it was closer to, it wasn't even at 2%. So we're now greater than we were for that same metric last month. And I really think that is pretty hard to argue that this particular market cycle has made a turn for at least this segment, the Gulf Access home market. Prices have turned around. We are seeing higher prices now than we were this time last year. I mean, it's just a fact. And one of the reasons for that is the number of active home listings on the market for Gulf Access homes. So let's look at that next. Total number of active listings on the market at one point or another during this past month for Gulf Access Homes in Cape Coral. 561, that's down remarkably from June's number of 636. We see some inventory come off the market in summers because, again, summers are a little bit slower months for Gulf Access Homes. We see a lot more sales happen in the first 6 months, so naturally some of the properties that didn't sell do temporarily come off the market in the summertime, and a lot of those sellers have the intention of putting them back on as we get into the first part of the following year during season. So it makes sense that we'll see some reduction of inventory in pretty much any market cycle. But this is something different. This is something more remarkable. The last 4 months, I mean, it's come down a tremendous amount. And even if you go back to just last year in July of 2025, the total number of active listings on the market for Gulf Access was 818. So we are down 257 net listings, or 31.4%. just in 12 months. And this chart, this particular market cycle for the inventory for Gulf Access Homes peaked out in April of last year, however long ago that was, 15 months or something like that. Peaked out at just under 1,100, 1099 total active listings on the market in April of 2025. We've taken 538 net properties off the market. That's 49%. We've taken half the market away in 15 months. It's just absolutely remarkable, and I think that's why you're starting to see these median prices come up. I've seen it just anecdotally in my own business. I do a lot of Gulf Access Home sales. I represent a lot of clients for Gulf Access Home purchases and sales for that matter. I do a lot of Gulf Access Home listings, especially in Cape Coral. I can't tell you how many multiple offer situations I've been in with clients so far this year for Gulf Access Homes. I haven't been in any multiple offer situations on any other type of real estate. It's been all Gulf Access Homes. And I think since I did the last report on here, we had 3 more multiple offer situations that we were a part of. Won a couple, lost one. So it's just showing you that the Gulf Access Home market has tightened up significantly, and now there are more buyers out there for Gulf Access Homes now than there was this time last year, almost 22% more. And there are basically 49, there's about half of the homes that were available last year. So you have a higher number of buyers competing for a much lower number of active listings on the market. And that's why we're seeing those prices and those dollars spent go up compared to last year in the first 7 months. But you take this back to July of 2024 when we hadn't seen that big ramp up in inventory yet, and the number was 763. So we're still down over 25%, over 26%, 26.5%, 202 properties since July of 2024. And the inventory right now as it sits, 561 properties for the month of July. That's the lowest number that has been on these charts since February of 2023, which is right after Hurricane Ian, when a lot of properties, especially the damaged ones in the lower southeast, the older Gulf Access Homes in the extreme southeast that had flood damage, a lot of those were taken off the market to get repairs and stuff like that. Lowest that we've seen since February of 2023 in terms of inventory for Gulf Access Homes. I'm absolutely ready to call it. We've seen the bottom of the Gulf Access Home market in this particular market cycle, and things are on the way back up. If you want me to put my money where my mouth is, my wife and I just contracted on a Gulf Access Home earlier this week for ourselves. We're buying a Gulf Access Home up in the Northwest. We've been waiting on this market cycle to show clear signs that it's bottomed out, and we struck while the opportunity was there. So I'm putting my money where my mouth is. And that's why I think I have a little bit of authority to tell you that you're seeing the bottom of the market right now, and maybe even the bottom of the market was a few months ago. But nevertheless, this is probably the best it's going to get for at least this particular market cycle. So if you are looking for a Gulf Access Home, you need to strike while the iron's hot, strike now, sooner than later, because as long as we're putting these high numbers up, especially in the middle of summer, I just can't tell you I can't tell you how much that does not happen in a normal market. So as long as these numbers continue to be high on the sales side and low on the inventory side, the prices will only start to go up. I don't think we're going to see a big 20% ramp up like we did in a single year, like we did a few years ago. But it's clearly heading in the other direction at this point. So you may look at buying sooner than later, because still, compared to a few years ago, I mean, these Gulf Access Home prices are still on sale, and there's still a lot of opportunity in this particular market cycle. But the window is closing here. It's pretty much closed at this point, and we're seeing this market cycle turn around. It's going to be a buyer's market very, very soon, or a seller's market very, very soon. But that wraps it up for Gulf Access Single Family Homes for the city of Cape Coral for July and August of 2026. Let's get over to condos and townhomes, and then we'll wrap up this video with some advice to buyers and advice to sellers. Okay, condos and townhomes. Condos and townhomes. So this category covers everything that's basically not a single family home. So we're talking about high-rise, low-rise, mid-rise condos, attached villas, townhomes, basically anything that's not multifamily, anything that's not commercial, of course, and anything that's not a single family home. So everything from that $70,000 condo sale that we saw in the lowest sales of the month all the way up to that $560,000 condo sale, everything in between, that's the numbers that we're talking about here. So let's talk about the total number of sales this past month. Condos, probably more than any other category. Gulf Access is a little bit similar to this, but condos are a very, very seasonal product. As you can imagine, a lot of the condo buyers here are seasonal residents. They're buying a lower dollar condo to be used as a second seasonal home or something like that. And so we just don't see nearly as many sales in the second half of the year as we do in the first half of the year. So it's natural for the activity to slow down quite a bit in the summertime for condos and townhomes, and this last month was no exception. We only sold 34 condos and townhomes this last month. That's down significantly from June. In June we had 62 closings, so almost half of what we saw in June we saw in July. But we're pretty close to what we were doing the last couple of years. In July of last year, 39 condo sales. In July 2025. In July of 2024, we had 39 condo sales. So we're not too far off of what normal looks like, at least in this current market cycle. But let's just look at the year so far. Let's look at the first 7 months and see where we are activity-wise. The first 7 months from January to July of 2026, we had 390 condo sales so far. From January to July of last year, the first 7 months of 2025, we had 312. So we're up 78%. We're up 25%. Condo demand is up 25%. So not quite what the Gulf Access real estate market is doing, but it's certainly a lot better than what we've seen in the off-water single-family home market. And again, I think that has to do with there are a lot more of these condo sales are cash sales. Not as many, certainly compared to the off-water single-family homes, there's not as many sales that are where buyers are being forced to get mortgages and they're having to deal with higher interest rates and things like that. So we're seeing a lot more activity for condos this year so far than we did last year, and even compared to the last few years. I mean, the first 7 months of 2024, we only sold 333 condos. First 7 months of 2023, 337. So we're up significantly. We're almost at 400 sales so far for the year. 390. We're up significantly from the prior 3 years, and I think one of the reasons for that is just condos have come down in price so much. So let's look at the median price. Here's the price chart. This is the monthly median price going back to January 2024. The median price for those 31 sales last month was $232,000. That's up from June's number of $202,500. But again, we're talking about a sample size that's only 30, 40, 70 properties a month. And as a result, you're seeing from month to month, you see these wild swings in that median price. So you really have to take a broader segment of the year and kind of look at it a little more from a 1,000-foot view to see what condos are actually doing, what the pricing is actually doing. So again, let's take a look at the first 7 months of the year. Take all the sales in the first 7 months and let's find the median, the one right in the middle. That's $215,000. First 7 months of 2025, median price for those condo sales, all those condo sales, $232,000. So first 7 months of last year, first 7 months of this year, we're down about $17,000 in terms of the total median price. Represents a reduction of about 7.3%. So more in this category than we've seen in any other categories. Gulf Access prices are up. Single family off-water properties, they're actually a little bit down. But not as much as this. I think the off-water single-family homes are down about a point and a half, 1.4%. The condos are still down 7.3% in terms of the price from where it was this time last year. And you can see that market correction even more clearly when you go back to the previous years. In 2024, the first 7 months, $262,000 was the median price. In 2023, when actually condos peaked out price-wise in 2023, the overall market and the Gulf Access and the off-water single-family home market, prices peaked out in spring of 2022. For whatever reason, prices for condos peaked out in spring of 2023. So the high point of the market would have been spring of 2023. In the first 7 months of 2023, the median price was $295,000. So that means we've taken $80,000 off the average condo price since the market peaked out in 2023. So we're down price-wise 27%. And again, that doesn't even include inflation numbers, where we've had a few years of pretty higher inflation. So if you factor that in, that market correction is probably closer to the mid to high 30s. So condos have been on sale. The majority of the reason for that is the fees have gone up. It created a little more forced sellers. We had insurance rates go up all of a sudden after a couple of hurricanes. We had just overall things in general in the economy with the high inflation. Costs went up, and as a result, a lot of these homeowners associations, these condo associations, had to increase their fees quite a bit. And whereas we were seeing maybe something around $350 a month is now $600 a month. Well, if you're on a fixed income, which a lot of condo owners, especially the primary residents, are, that's a pretty big jump up in costs. So it created a few more forced sellers that needed to get out from underneath that condo. There wasn't a lot of condo buying going on, at least until this year. And as a result, put some downward pressure on the prices. And so this category, more than any other category, we've seen a price correction. And again, 27% just on paper, not even including inflation. So condos have been on sale. I think they represent a tremendous opportunity, especially for somebody that you wouldn't think might be a condo buyer, like a first-time home buyer, somebody in their 20s or 30s or something like that. If you are priced out of the single-family home market, but you want to participate in the inevitable increase of this particular real estate market, the future looks very bright for this real estate market. If you want to participate in that, start building equity, start building some investment worth in those properties. And if you can't get into the single-family home market, buy a condo. You can go buy a condo for 70 grand right now. Go buy a condo for $70,000, fix it up, and then in a few years it's going to be worth X, and you may be able to sell that and jump into the single-family home market or something like that if that's what you want to do. But jump in, participate. Condos are on sale right now. A lot of really great deals in spite of the higher fees on condos. But let's look at the inventory. So again, we're down $80,000 from the high point of this particular market cycle in 2023. One of the reasons is because the inventory went up so much and demand stayed relatively low, at least until this year. So here's the total number of active listings on the market each month going back to January 2024. And again, we've seen a remarkable decrease in condo inventory over the course of the last year and a half, really, but definitely just in the last 6 months. Total number of active listings on the market, 372 in July of this year. That's down from June's number of 396. And you go back to July of 2025, 12 months prior, 459 on the market. So we're down 19% from where we were 12 months ago. And the high point for inventory in this particular market cycle peaked out in February of last year, where there were 573 properties on the market. So we were down 201 from that top of the market cycle. 35% reduction. Over a third of the condos that were available have come off the market since February of last year, 17 or so months ago. And even when you look back to July of 2024, the inventory was 459. So we're still down 19%, almost 20% from where we were 2 years ago. And the inventory level right now for condos is the lowest that it's been in this real estate market since June of 2023 at the market height. So inevitably, especially as demand, demand's up, 25%. Demand's up 25%. The overall inventory is down 20 to 35%, depending on when you look at it last year. And inevitably, this particular market cycle will turn around for condos just like it's turning around for everything else. I think condos probably more than anything represents the biggest opportunity to get in at a lower price and be able to build up some worth, because not building too many new condo complexes out there. So as long as the inventory stays low, there's still a lot of seasonal folks that want to be here, still a lot of folks that can afford the higher HOA fees that want to be here, and you should get into the condo market. If you're unable to get into a single family home, you should try to get into the condo market. Or if you're just looking for something seasonal residence where you don't have to worry about it, no maintenance or anything like that, now is the time to kind of jump on that. I don't know whether we'll see pricing go up much for condos in the remaining months of the year. If anything, it'll be probably pretty flat, maybe even a point or two to go before we really turn things around. But we've taken so much inventory off the market, unless something happens to where a big ramp up in inventory happens, we're probably pretty close to the bottom of the market as far as condos, and they are lagging behind the rest of the categories. So condos probably more than anything else have fallen the most, and they are probably going to be the slowest to make the turnaround, whereas Gulf Access is leading the market right now. But that wraps up condos and townhomes for the month of August 2026 for the city of Cape Coral, Florida. Let's get into some advice. We're going to start off with some advice if maybe you're a current or future buyer in the Cape Coral real estate market. Then we'll do some advice if you're a current or future seller in the Cape Coral real estate market. I'll finish this video with just a summary of the state of the entire Cape Coral residential real estate market, and then we'll get you out of here. All right, so if you're a buyer in the current Cape Coral real estate market, or you plan to be maybe in the next 6-12 months, what is my advice to you? What do you need to be paying attention to and thinking about as we start to make a really evident turn in this Cape Coral real estate market? At least this particular market cycle is turning around, especially in some categories. Well, basically, we've been waiting for this bottom of this real estate market to show itself, and I think there are signs everywhere that it's showing itself right now, especially in some categories. In some categories like Gulf Access, I think it's plainly evident that we've bottomed out and made the turn. And I'm seeing that as a result, I'm seeing that just anecdotally in my day-to-day business working with clients. We're seeing so far this year, I've seen just quite a few multiple offer situations on Gulf Access homes specifically. So the inventory has come down remarkably, especially in categories like Gulf Access, but really across the board. No matter what category you look at, the inventory, the total number of active listings on the market has come down significantly, in excess of 30% in a lot of cases from where we were in the spring of last year when this market cycle peaked out. When we were doing these reports in spring of last year, I was telling you, basically doom and gloom for the sellers. We're seeing super high record inventory levels. We're seeing the total number of sales were down somewhat significantly from previous years. And now just in the last 12 or 18 months, it's been remarkably reversed in the other direction. We're seeing a heck of a lot more sales happening right now so far this year. In some cases 20, 25, 30 plus % more sales this year versus last year. And inventory is down by as much or more of that. Gulf Access, there's half as many Gulf Access homes on the market right now than there was in spring of last year. That's just remarkable. To take 49% of the market off in just 17 or so months is significant. And you couple that with higher demand, and it's inevitable that the market is going to do what it does, which is turn around. And so Gulf Access homes, if you're looking for a Gulf Access home, you've probably missed the bottom at this point. That's not necessarily a bad thing. You're just going to have to be more competitive as a buyer. Make sure you get your affairs in order with your financing. Make sure you get your affairs in order if you're buying cash. Make sure you have all that stuff ready, and be prepared to be a little bit more aggressive when you're going in offering on these Gulf Access homes, especially if something hasn't been listed for very long. That's when we're seeing these multiple offer situations, these properties that are priced right. There's a bevy of Gulf Access home buyers sitting on the sideline waiting for that one property to hit the market. It hits the market. Now you're running into other buyers. When you're showing the house, there's a buyer before you, there's a buyer after you, and by the time you make that offer, there's 3 or 4 offers on the table. And I've seen that even in the last month. I think there were 3 or 4 of those situations, separate ones, on Gulf Access homes just in my own business. So far this year, I've probably more than double that seen so far. So Gulf Access is leading the way. Gulf Access prices, there's a lot of evidence that Gulf Access prices have gone up a little bit compared to where we were last year. And so I think it's pretty clear that that particular category has turned the corner in this particular market cycle. I think the ones bringing up the rear are the off-water single-family homes and the condos. The condos still have shown a pretty solid decrease in pricing this year versus the same first 7 months of last year. So we're down 7+% in pricing for condos in the first 7 months of this year compared to the first 7 months of last year. So condos may have a percentage point or 2 to go. Probably more than anything, they'll remain pretty flat, especially as more and more of that inventory comes off the market and that particular market segment becomes more and more competitive. The off-water single-family homes, I think the only reason those properties are lagging behind is because we have stubbornly high mortgage interest rates, and 80% or so of the sales for that category of property are buyers using a mortgage to buy that property, whereas Gulf Access, almost half of the sales are cash. And the retirement markets, stock markets, equities markets, and things like that have been doing pretty well compared to high interest rates over here. So if you're able to buy something cash, I think that's why we're seeing a lot more of those Gulf access home sales versus the off-water single-family home sales. So condos are bringing up the rear. Right in the middle, we've got the single-family off-water homes, and by far way out ahead in terms of leading this particular market turnaround, the Gulf access homes. So depending on what you're looking at, there's a strategy to be had there. Definitely get a hold of me. Call, text, or email me anytime. Contact information's right there on the screen. I always enjoy hearing from folks that watch this. They usually, if you're watching this, you're probably pretty informed. You've stayed on top of the Cape Coral real estate market. It makes my job a heck of a lot easier. And depending on what you're looking for, we can kind of put a plan together and kind of see where we need to go and how we need to strategize to most effectively put you in a position to get you the best property possible at the best possible price, given the current state of the real estate market and the conditions that we're facing out there. But yeah, get a hold of me sooner than later. This market cycle is making a turn right now, and if you wait too long, you're going to be sitting in a seller's market, and you're kind of going to be at the mercy of these sellers. They've certainly been at the mercy of buyers for the last few years, so it looks like it's going to be their turn for a while right now. But get a hold of me, call, text, email me anytime. Love to hear from you. Okay, if you're a seller in the Cape Coral real estate market, or you plan to be in the next 6-12 months, what is my advice to you? What do you need to be paying attention to and thinking about as it looks like that we're making this turnaround in this particular market cycle? Well, if you've been watching this for the last, I think I've been doing this 2.5 years now, every single month. And if you watch some of my early ones or even last year, it was all kind of doom and gloom for sellers. There wasn't a really pretty picture to paint for sellers. It was a very, very heavy buyer's market around spring of last year. Really, it's been a buyer's market the last few years, really since the market peaked out in 2022, but definitely 25 and 24. And there hasn't been a lot of good news come your way, and you've been patient, and your patience is now paying off. Not only are we seeing a light at the end of the tunnel, we're seeing trees and everything else at the end of the tunnel. So this particular market cycle is making a very clear turnaround right now. There are some categories that are ahead of others, especially Gulf access. Man, if you're a Gulf access home seller, if you're planning on selling your Gulf access home in the next 6-12 months, please get a hold of me. I would love nothing more than to sell Gulf access homes right now. You're just in a much better position, as long as you still got to price your property right and all those things. The property has to be looking good, but a lot more buyers in the market right now for Gulf access homes, a lot fewer available properties. And I know the homes that I list, we always get them priced right. We always get them looking really, really top notch. And I've been having a lot of success in selling those properties in the first 30 days. I'm not going to guarantee that for everybody, but we're seeing a lot of success for Gulf access homes right now. I've got a gnat killing me here. So yeah, if you're a home seller, you're seeing a light at the end of the tunnel. This particular market cycle is turning around. The other categories are lagging behind the Gulf access homes. The off-water single-family homes, it's still a little bit harder to sell those properties right now, mainly because the interest rates are still pretty high. I think they're the highest they've been in about a year, and most of the buyers for these off-water single-family homes are getting a mortgage, about 80% of them, and as a result, their purchasing power is not what it was 6 months or so ago. So the inventory levels have come down. It's still putting pressure on those buyers in terms of what they're able to afford, because we've got, mid to high sixes in terms of the interest rate percentage points for traditional mortgages. So that's going to be lagging behind the Gulf access. Condos are certainly lagging behind everything else, just because it's taken a deeper dive on the pricing than a lot of other properties. But the good news is the demand for all three categories is the demand for off-water single-family homes is about the same where it was last year, but for condos and Gulf access homes, it's up significantly from where it was this time last year. So you're in a better position as a condo seller, even though you still got to be mindful of that price. We're getting into the slow months of the year, so if you are planning on selling a condo in the next few months, you still got to be really competitive, still get that property looking top-notch and get it priced right more than anything. But hopefully, as we get into the main season for condos this next year, we're going to see a really, really strong first 6 months of 2027 for condos, and that particular category will make that turn like everything else will. But get a hold of me if you are a seller. There's a strategy to be had. We got to get that price right. Got to get it looking top notch. I always tell folks every single month on this channel, the most important thing when you're going to sell a property is what that property looks like on the drive up and the first 5 seconds of walking through the front door, because those potential buyers are going to make either a positive or negative impression within that first 5 seconds of walking through the front door. And it's very, very difficult to change that once that first impression has been made. So if you make a good impression, if they see some things they maybe don't like, they can usually overlook those things if you've got a positive first impression. If you make a negative impression, even if the rest of your house looks top-notch, very, very difficult to overcome that once it's been made by those buyers. So get that first 5 seconds walking through the front door, looking, smelling, everything top notch. And there's some strategies that we can help guide you through. So if you are a seller in the Cape Coral real estate market, or you will be in the next 6 or 12 months or so, get a hold of me. Love to chat with you, especially if you're a Gulf access home seller. I love nothing more than selling Gulf access homes these days. So call, text, or email me anytime. I would love to hear from you. I always enjoy hearing from folks, especially the ones that watch these videos every month, because I know that you're educated on the market and you've stayed up to date, and it makes my job a whole heck of a lot easier when we're going through the numbers and explaining everything. So get a hold of me, call, text, email me. Would love to hear from you. Love to hear about your property and tell you how I can help you out with that. But that's my advice for sellers. This particular market cycle is turning around, and things are looking a lot rosier for you right now than they were this time last year. All right, so let's put a bow on this thing. Let's wrap it up and give you kind of a summary of the entire Cape Coral residential real estate market as it sits right now in August of 2026, especially if you didn't want to wait through all of those fine details that we just got into with the different categories and things like that. What's going on right now? Well, the big story has been for the last year, the dramatic decrease in inventory levels. The number of active listings on the market has decreased significantly, being led by the Gulf access waterfront homes. We've seen half of the market come off the market in the last 17 or so months. That's remarkable. That's not usually a normal situation. Furthermore, we've seen demand across almost all categories go up. Gulf access home demand is up 20-some%. The number of dollars being spent on Gulf access properties is up 33%. So up significantly, demand's up significantly across most categories. The waterfront single-family homes, I think, are lagging behind in terms of the number of sales compared to the number of sales last year. And really the price is about the same as it was last year, maybe $5,000 less this year. And the reason for that is the mortgage interest rates remain high, and that's the majority of buyers are buying with mortgage interest rates in those categories. But condo demand is up 25%. Gulf access home demand is up almost 30%, over 29%. Total dollars being spent is up in excess of those. And that just tells me that all metrics point to this particular market cycle turning around. I think we can safely say that the Gulf access home market has already turned around. Prices are up almost 3% in the first 7 months of this year compared to the first 7 months of last year when you take everything all together. Not so much the case for condos. They're down still from the first 7 months of this year compared to the first 7 months of last year. Condos are still down almost 8%. Single family off-water homes are down about 1.4%. So I think those categories are in the process of flattening out. If they have been in the process of flattening out for the last 12 months, really. So we will probably see those two categories follow up Gulf access. Gulf access is probably already in a seller's market at this point. I've seen a lot more multiple offer situations for Gulf access homes, especially the ones that look good and they're priced right. There's a lot of Gulf access home buyers sitting on the sidelines waiting for that right property to hit. And when it hits, you're just seeing, you know, as somebody who's showing the home to buyers, I'm seeing other agents and buyers showing the property before us and after us, and we're getting into these results where we've got 3 or 4 offers on the table that we have to compete with, and we're having to bid up over list price. We just did that a couple of weeks ago on one where we had to go over list price on it, and it was a really nice house. It was really priced well, and as a result, we had a lot of activity on it in the first couple of days that it hit the market. So we're seeing those signs that this particular market cycle has made a turn, especially for Gulf access homes. Still need to price your property right if you are a seller. Need to get it looking good, but if you do those things, you're having a lot more success now than you were this time last year. And again, some categories are better than others, so we've got a little work to do on the condo front before things turn around. I think we might see maybe a percentage point or two still reduction in overall prices for condos before it flattens out, but we might be pretty flat at this point. It remains to be seen. We'll see what the activity looks like in the remaining months of the year, but I think we can safely say it's pretty flattened out on the off-water single-family home market, and the big catalyst there is if we do get some relief from higher mortgage interest rates, that's going to spur more buyers into the market to go ahead and jump on this, and those buyers are going to have higher purchasing power, and so we'll probably see those prices inevitably start to turn around as well. So Some categories are doing a heck of a lot better than others. It just depends on what you're looking for if you're a buyer. It depends on what you're selling if you're a seller. So get a hold of me. I would love to hear from you. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you got a lot of information out of it. I hope you have a clear understanding of what the Cape Coral residential real estate market looks like right now in August 2026. If I can do anything for you, if you're buying or selling a property anywhere in Southwest Florida, it doesn't have to be Cape Coral. Again, I've been doing this for 20 years. We buy and sell a lot of properties for clients, and I would love to hear about your individual situation and tell you how I can help you out with that. So call, text, or email me anytime. Get a hold of me. Beyond that, thank you so much for being here. I know these are longer videos and very, very dry. In fact, when my kids don't eat their vegetables, I make them watch Daddy's monthly Cape Coral real estate market report videos, so they hate that. Thanks so much for being here. I do appreciate your time. I'll see you in the next video here in just a few days, so make sure you're subscribed.
Like and subscribe. Just kidding.